Hey, I've decided to do a series of videos on this McIntosh system, this old vintage McIntosh system. You see how I have the cat bed on there right now, and with this pad on the top of the speaker and this, he doesn't hurt. He never touches anything, and he's got his little scratch posting thing down here. He never does anything. It's safe. So I just put a thin cover over this, even though I have padded feet on the bottom of this old McIntosh CD player. But my plan is, I think I mentioned this in one of my new Shack videos, and this is going to be my vintage Macintosh series of videos. Uh, you see what I have is I have that buck boost. It's just, I wanted something to, because when I lived in San Jose, when I first got this EQ and this 1700 receiver, when I made that Shack video, I think I said 1500. No, this is the 1700. I don't know what I was looking at. It says it right there, right? But I got these in San Jose, and our line voltage there sometimes would drop down to like 90 volts, and it would come up to like 260 volts. I mean, it was all over the place. And if I leave it in the middle position, there's a switch in the back where you can set the sensitivity and everything for when it triggers. And there's also an adjustment. And if you set it, what would happen was when I'd leave it, when it would just be, it only come on or off, it would only buck or boost it if if there was a problem, like it would boost it up. If the line voltage dropped, it would bring it up, and then it would, drop it back down if it was up too high to a certain voltage. But it was always clicking up and down. I constantly would hear this thing click. And I had my vinyl, had my turntable going with this one time. And you could hear, I was playing a record, and you could hear the speed of it slow up and down as this thing would go up and down. And I finally had to buck it to where it was like, it was regulating it down to where it was always holding it down. And that's what I had to do. And I left it that way until we moved here, and I had it that way the whole time. But then I remembered that, I checked our line voltage here when I'm doing all my stuff here in the shack and everything, and it looked like everything was okay. I mean, it pretty much sits there at 120 volts AC RMS. That's where it is. And it might fluctuate like a volt or two up or down, maybe a hair bit more, but we have very stable. And what happens is when we do have a power outage, it just goes out, and because something happened, a tree limb or a transformer blew, and they come out and they fix it, and it still stays at 120. So I was able to put this thing to where it doesn't come on, it doesn't buck, it doesn't boost or buck unless, there's a change in the voltage. I haven't seen this thing click one time yet since I switched it back to the center position. So it's pretty good. So anyway, this is that Mac 1700 receiver. It's got this was the very first hybrid that they came out with. And it has a tube type FM tuner, no AM mode. It's FM only. And everything else is solid state. It has a bunch of new Vistors. And one of the things I need to do is I need to go through this thing and write down all the part numbers. And I need to try to get some of those spare part new Vistors, because some of those things may not even be available anymore. Now, I can get the stuff. It's just that there's a couple sources, there's a couple places where I can get that really hard to find stuff. After all the years of finding parts, I know where to get them if I need them. I'm just going to pay for them, but I can get them. So I thought I might get at least two spare, of new Vistors for each one, and, whatever other, transistors are in here. But there's a lot of new Vistors in this, so that's the thing. But this thing looks like brand new, and the story is on this. I remember the guy I got it from. I got it from a guy in LA. His uncle worked in Sunnyvale, where I used to live. He worked for Lockheed Martin. And that's who owned this thing. And he was the original owner of it. And, when he wasn't using it, it stayed up in a shelf in a closet, I think, covered up. And this guy I got it from was that, it was his nephew, right? So the guy was his uncle. So he got it from him, and then he sold it, and I'm the one who bought it. But this thing, the guy was the original owner, and he took immaculate care of this thing. Because the guy he went through, now the guy the guy I got it from, he'd taken it to his McIntosh service guy, and they, of course, they went in there and they replaced all those Mallory, those tubular, paper caps in there, every one of them. They've got that hard plastic shell, but they're white. He replaced every one of those. But I've yet to take this thing. I've had the wooden cover off, of course, the cabinet, but I've never pulled the lids or the bottoms off to actually look at the circuitry. So I need to turn this, because when I bought this thing, he gave me the bag of parts that the guy had serviced, and I know this guy, he wouldn't have been BSing me. This guy he's one of those McIntosh fanatics. Right, he's a McIntosh fanatic. So he's one of those guys that would spend $1,000 on a tube just because he thinks the tube is better than the other brands. So, seriously, this is how crazy some of these people are. There's audiophiles, and then there's audio fools, and everybody knows what audio foolery is, right? It's these people that fall for this crazy, outlandish stuff that's, that's not real. That's like, people need to understand too, back in the days of RMS power and everything, that was all a marketing gimmick that the manufacturer started using. It's no different than when the very first gas station got the idea, because the gas station across the street was selling gas for 29 cents a gallon. Well, what if they actually made their sign read 28.9, and that's what they started doing, right? It was like 28.99.9 or whatever, they started adding that extra 1/10 of a cent. It was nothing but a marketing gimmick. It never meant anything. It doesn't mean the gas is more expensive, or it doesn't mean it was cheaper. It doesn't mean any of that. It just meant that it was a marketing gimmick that one station did years ago, and it caught on, and the next thing you know, another station started doing it, and it just became the norm. And that's what that 0.9 of a cent is. It doesn't mean anything. It's an old marketing gimmick that caught on, and I don't know why after all these years they don't eliminate that. It's kind of crazy, don't you think? Because really, if you're paying a certain amount, that 0.9, you could round that thing over 1/10 of a cent, and it's going to be an even amount. Why not just make it even and not do it that way, right? But oh well. Some things catch on and they never go away, But that's sort of the same type of thing, and I was getting at on this, is that, the fools, they fall for stuff that's not real. Now, I will say one thing. There's a lot of old stubborn ham operators that I know that if you try to tell them, well, if you use this type of capacitor, compared to this brand, it's constructed this way, it's a little bit better material, and then they say this will actually make your system sound a little bit better, and they'll say that's one of those audio foolery stuff, and they'll try to make fun of you. The thing is, they don't understand that they're ignorant, because think about it. Why do you think they use mica capacitors for RF bypassing and RF coupling a lot of the times? Why do you think micas are preferred over ceramics, but why do you think ceramics will still work? Or maybe a mylar? Why wouldn't you use a tantalum for RF bypassing? Why wouldn't you use an electrolytic for RF bypassing? Why wouldn't you use any other type of capacitor for RF bypassing? It's because the materials works better for certain things than it does for others. It's the same thing. If you have say you have a capacitor, say it's of certain value, but you have 10 different types of capacitors, round, some of them are, ceramic discs, some of them are mylar, some of them are, silver micas. You never know what you had. And say they're all the exact same value. If you ran a frequency, if you actually swept those with a low frequency and a high frequency and looked at the range, you will find out that different constructions of those capacitors pass, certain frequencies better than others. And there's certain capacitors you can use for audio coupling and your audio amplifiers that will pass that frequency you're trying to hear better than another capacitor that's made out of a different type of material. But you try to tell those old guys that and they'll laugh at you, and they don't realize that we're the ones that are laughing at them because they just don't get it. So that's where, there's audiophiles and there's audio fools, and you got to be an audiophile, right? So just don't become an audio fool. You got to know what stuff that's total made up BS and what stuff is actually real. And you have to know the difference to be able to give anybody any kind of an accurate, answer. Hey, come on. Hang on just a second. Get down. He's trying to get up here. He was trying to look out the window, and I closed the blind so we could get a little bit better shot of this. But I got this, like I said, this thing is still like brand new. I mean, inside and out, it's unbelievable. Max, stop it. Here, knock it off. Come on, get out. Now. I'll let you up there in a minute. He's trying to see outside. He wants to go out right now is what it is. But I found that, and then I actually got a hold of not these speakers, but what are they? God, I'm trying to, I've already forgotten what is it? The ML1s, the ML1Cs. And I had the single ML1Cs, and I've got them out in the garage now. I finally took them out of here. I think I had them over here the last time I made a video, and I told you. But I had those, and they were kind of beat up, and they worked, and I finally blew one of the tweeters in them after I got this thing and used it for a while. But because those speakers were worn out, that's why I took them out there. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to just take all the speakers out and just save everything for parts, and then just maybe, I don't know. I'll probably save the grills and maybe dispose of the cabinets, but we'll see, because one of them's got a really big chip on the edge of it on the back. I got those things really cheap, but I had those speakers, and then I finally found this, and this was the EQ for those speakers, these speakers, and then the ML4Cs, which you have 4 woofers. This has 2 woofers, of course, and the bigger, there was one more. You think by 4L, you mean it'd have 2 more. No, it had 1 more speaker, and they were able to get 4 woofers, 2 on each side, up and down. Same size, they're 12-inch, right? But these are great. But I found, that's what I had. I had this, and now we moved here. Like I said, my plan is, well, then I eventually, to not get ahead of myself, I found this about a few months later. This is the old, the MCD 7005. It came out in the mid-'80s. Now, this is one of the very few 2005 5s that still actually works. What happened was, this was not even made by McIntosh. They paid, was it Toshiba or whatever the company, whoever it was, that started with the name letter T. I don't think it was TIAC. I think it was somebody, but Philips was making the laser heads on this. And for some reason, McIntosh and the other companies had a fallout with Philips, and Philips said, we're not going to make any more of these heads. And what happened was, people were getting these CD players, and they were crapping out after a short amount of time. The thing is, a few of these survived. If you got one that actually worked, and it kept working for, say, a year or more, then it probably lasts forever. And this happens to be one of those small handful of units that this laser has been working this whole time. And if it ever craps out, I'm just going to buy that more expensive, what is it, that MCD, that new modern one, and I'll just do that. Now, I think if this cabinet's not the right size, I'll get the cabinet that is the right size for it. But my plan is, I think I said in my new Shack series video, that my plan is I'm just going to build a wooden frame here with wooden shells, and I'm going to stain everything to match this same color or close to it, you know. Then I'm going to put I'll probably put the EQ right here, this receiver right here where this thing is, and this CD player will be down towards the bottom. I'm going to have to space everything to make it fit, and then leave enough space so I can, get if I get a different CD player that's a different size. Well, this one's pretty tall. It'd probably be the same height or maybe not as tall, so that'd probably be okay. If I made it for that height, I'd probably be good to go. I'd eventually, at some point in time down the road, like to get one of those new reproduction McIntosh tube amps, the ones that got the chrome, chassis, and put it down there on the bottom. But then I'd have to get a different power thing. Well, that was temporary anyway. I just had to figure out a way to keep that crazy, because in San Jose, there's like 1 million people. If you count all the illegal aliens, it's probably like, God, 1.5 million. That's how bad it is. There's a lot of people there, and what would happen is they'd have to run the line voltage up really high to compensate for the sag when people would come home, like in the summertime, start turning their ACs on. And I swear to God, I watched that power jump up and down so high. It was like up and down, up and down. It was just so unstable that I had to do this to protect this equipment. And now that, you know, where we live, where I don't have the problem anymore, it's okay. But I'd still like to have a decent power conditioner just to keep everything clean, so everything's stable on it. Because this is old vintage stuff that, you know, it's worth a little bit of money, and I don't want, you know, I don't want to see it get destroyed. But here's the thing. One of the things that I mentioned when I did that My New Shack video series, that last one where I was talking about these speakers, where I said, I've looked all over these. I can't find one nick on the woodwork anywhere on either one of these. And I found the actual service information manuals for these speakers, because the guy didn't have that. I had the original boxes that came from the original owner, and I found this. And I looked at the serial number on the box, and I looked at the ones in back. And now I don't know, we brought them in here, and I don't remember if this is the one that's 200 something or if this is the one that's 199. But I looked at this. These speakers, they started making these in 1971. And these are this is the serial numbers L1C001. That would have been the first that would have been the very first one they made, right? Well, guess what number, like I said, I don't know which one is which on which side, but one of these speakers I have here is L1C199, and the other one's L1C203. These were, one of them's 199 and one of them's 203. These are the very first ones that went, the first couple hundred that went out the door from the factory. So I have a hunch the person that owned these was probably well known, but they're still, I mean, they work. I mean, and it looks like there's an actual service bulletin, and I have a hunch it was probably done, because when these first came out in 1971, and these are from 1971, I've confirmed it because of the serial number. And when these first came out, they had a problem. They were blowing the 8-inch mid-range. And, you know, they changed the resistor in the crossover network, and I have all the different, there's two of these service manuals. There's one for this serial number range, and the ones for the last ones they made. And the last ones they made, they actually put the crossover on a circuit board. Thank God this is one of the original ones. But the crossover basically never changed much, except they changed that one resistor. But chances are I need to go in there and probably replace the capacitors on there and look at the resistors. Normally I go through and I'll do that, but I have to lay them down. I have to pull one of the woofers out and look at it. And I want to hold off until I'm ready to do it, because right now they're working. But from the sound of them, I think the caps probably need to be replaced, because I can tell they're not quite 100% yet. And I did go through and I put new heavy RCA jumper cables between all my stuff with lower impedance, so it would drive everything better. And that actually made a difference. So anyway, but the CD player still works, and these speakers, like I said, these were the first bunch of them that they made, the first set of them that went out the first couple hundred that went out the door, you know, back in 71. So. And they look like new, and they still work like almost new. So, but like I said, I think the caps and the crossovers, I can kind of tell by the way they sound. But what I'm saying is that that 8-inch mid-range, the reason I think that service bulletin had been done to these, because somebody did replace the rubber, what do you call the thing, and you can tell the new stuff around it. It's got that shiny coating. Somebody did fix those mid-ranges, so that tells me it was probably done. But when I pull the things out, I pull that one bottom woofer out, and I'll look in there where the crossover is, and I can see who knows, hopefully they changed that resistor. I don't think they wouldn't have. I'm sure the guy would have gone to a McIntosh guy. I mean, these things look like I said the first time, it looks like somebody just bought these a couple of years ago and had taken them out of the box, put them in their living room, didn't have kids, maybe wasn't married, who knows, and they just sat there and they weren't really used that much. Maybe he used them, you know, they used them, but they just were never physically touched. And then they got put back in the box and they were just not used for all these years. That's what they look like. Or maybe the guy was just some, you know, rich fanatic. He was single or something, and the room he had them in they never got touched. He was the only one, and he was like he was like what do you call, what's the word I'm thinking of? Meticulous. He was meticulous with his gear, like I am too, in a manner of speaking. I'm not. If something got a nick on it, it used to really bother me. But in my older age, I'm like, big deal. I'm not as meticulous on that stuff as I used to be. But I still like to keep things like brand new if I possibly can. Sometimes, things happen. You can't always do that, but I try to. So anyway, that's the story on this. But my plan is that when I get that frame and the shells built for this, I'm probably going to take each one of these units out in the shop, pull the covers off. I'm going to inspect everything, do a cleanse. I'm going to clean blow that, get an air can, blow dust out anything that's gotten in there since I've had it. Because the guy had this thing looking like brand new when he dropped it. I bought this thing from a guy, and he actually drove from LA, and because he wanted to see a friend, he thought, I'll make an excuse, I can go see my friend that weekend. So he just drove up from LA and came to my house and delivered it. That's what he did. So anyway, I'm really glad to have the original set of new speakers to go with this EQ and having this vintage Mac receiver. Although the only thing I miss is from the moderns, like the stuff from the late 70s, early 80s, when the receiver started having the big weighted fluid knobs. I miss that big weighted fluid volume knob. You could just slowly turn it up. Now, some of them they were like indentations. It was like click, click, click. They were steps, but the steps, each step only moved it a tiny bit, and those were okay, but I preferred the really fluid ones where you could turn the knob. It had that weighted feel. You could just get this thing, because this one, it's got that old style pot in this knob. This one, by the way, a lot of these, the on and off switches will crap out. And our voltage going up and down in San Jose wasn't the main reason I bought this, is that with these things that people know, don't click these things on and off. I've only ever clicked this on and off, I think, twice, and it still works. These things are known to be a failure, and that when you turn them enough times, they fail. And there is no replacement. So, that's the thing. So that's why I power everything off from that box with that switch, and that's how you get around it. I just turn it down all the way down, and I just turn it off. I don't turn it down and go click to shut it off. And this pot, if I ever go to sell this thing, it'll still be working for the next buyer. So, but I don't plan on, I'll probably be buried with this thing. So I'd like to have one of those, what was it, the C22 preamp and the matching tuner and a pair of MC60 mono blocks like I found at that garage sale here when I was like 12 years old. Oh God, I remember that. That was great. Then I had that, then I didn't actually hook it all up because I didn't really know what to do. I bought it and then I put it in my closet. And then we moved down to Oklahoma and I went to hook it up. And I found somebody who knew how to hook it up, and they showed me, and I got so addicted to that tube system. That's back in the days, though, when this McIntosh stuff, you could find the stuff at a garage sale, because people did, but most people, the average person that didn't know what this stuff was, it's just some old tube-type stereo receiver, and they don't care, and they just, big deal, and they just either garbage can or sell it cheap at a garage sale. This is back when people, this stuff wasn't worth like what it is today, because a lot of people, they just junked this stuff in the trash too, when it got old. But this stuff, I only buy the stuff that looks like it was in new condition almost. So that's why, I try to buy the primo stuff, and I just keep it forever. So, but I miss it. And one thing I mentioned, my plan is when I get that down there, I'm going to put my turntable on top. But I want to find, what I want? People are going to think I'm crazy. My most favorite turntables are those old German-made ELAC mirror chords. Remember, throughout the early and mid and late 60s, they made the one with that gray metal base, and those turntables would last forever. And the 40As had the later ones had the Qs on them. Those were great, and they came out with some special ones. But then later, they started getting more cheaply made, and then Radio Shack had out that one that they actually made for them, the Mirrorchord 46. That was the nicest looking one that they made. Maybe not the most durable like the old, like the old 40s and 40As, or even the 10s, 10As, but they were good ones, right? And I had one of those. The only thing is, I think the Q, every now and then the Q lever would stop working. And I don't know if it was a fluid thing that would have a problem or if it was just an adjustment. And I'd take it to the manager at the Radio Shack store. He'd take it in the back room and he'd fix it and bring it back out. And I say $10 or whatever the price was. He didn't charge me very much. It was like a 15-minute service call or something. But I loved that turntable. It had the wooden base, but it was automatic. You could just play single records, or it was automatic. You could have them drop down. Those were my favorite turntables. And I'm thinking, if I can find a new old stock looking, Miracord 46, occasionally that stuff does pop. You'll find one that looks like brand new. And if I find one, I'm probably going to grab it. I've got a more modern turntable, which is probably better quality, but I don't know. I don't like the way the stylus I put on it sounds. I'd prefer to have an old Miracord 46 sitting on top of here. So that's all for now, 73s, and I'm going to be getting back on my transmitter project later today. This is morning time here. It's getting close to noon, and it's too cold out in the garage, and I have to wait till the afternoon so the garage warms up before I go out there and do anything. So 73s for now on this vintage McIntosh. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to call this yet. So when I upload this video, whatever I call it's going to be the series. That's what I'm going to call it. 73s.